All right. So let's see. I guess I can't get my photo up. So I'm Jean Boucher, and I'm just going to talk about my own experience here with IFS and with attachment theory stuff. So I'm entitling this How I Went from Disorganized, Fearful, Avoidant to Secure Attachment Style in 2 years. And it's just going to be reflections on my own journey. Yeah. And I've dismantled the chat. So please, if you have clarifying questions, you can just interrupt. But if you could just maybe note your questions till the end, I hope to just talk for less than half an hour and then open things up for questions and stuff like that. So, okay. So I'm going to talk about some background about on me, then I'm going to talk about IFS and I'll give some examples, then I'll talk about attachment. Then I'm going to talk about how the two can overlap, and then we'll go into questions and comments. Hopefully, I don't plan on this going over an hour, and then if people could stay on mute and hold their questions till at least the half hour point, unless you really need a clarifying question, then I'm open to that. So just some qualifiers. I'm a PhD sociologist, but I also got my undergrad in mechanical engineering, so I kind of switched. Um, Yields probably pretty sharply. But the reason I say this is because I have a pretty strong science and knowledge prowess and a pretty strong rational side. And that I think was quite helpful for me with IFS and the other theories and trying to see how these theories actually became practices. And it also helped me to believe when I saw someone was a scientist and they made particular claims about the science, for example, like I could actually heal, I was inclined to say, all right, I'll give it a shot since they're saying they have evidence for this. So the other thing is n equals one is kind of a scientific. I'm one person out of a whole lot, but so the evidence is that people can heal, and then the n equals one is sort of just talking about how I'm one example of someone who I feel is almost at the end of my sort of healing journey. Um, I'm 60, and the reason I say that is maybe there's something to do with my maturity in this process. I've been in and out of therapy for 35 years. But it wasn't until IFS that I started really efficiently getting to know myself and having tools for healing. And I've also been a closet psychologist kind of for years and have like a lust for learning. So I liked this quote and I thought I would start with it. If adults didn't help you navigate your emotions as a child, there's a good chance you still struggle with accessing, feeling, sharing, or processing them. But navigating feelings is a skill that can be learned and developed over time. It's never too late. And I also mention here inner physics. So Dick Schwartz uses this term inner physics. So again, for me, this it turns its eye to the science and that this can be done. Although I think there at times there is a sort of an art to it and sort of an intuition of sensing what's happening, but still I see a science to this. So some early diagnoses or labels I attached to about 20 years ago, I went to a talk on PTSD and I was like, I got some of those symptoms. And at the time, I think, or even earlier, PTSD was only really seen as people who had been in war situations, but it was starting to expand. Um, and so then also highly sensitive person. There was a book out, I think it came out in the 1990s. I forget the author. But this also helped me when I identified that I had this high sensitivity and I had this collection of symptoms, and that helped me to feel, it helped me to some comfort, and then also to point to, what are some of the solutions to this? And then when I heard CPTSD, I was a little bit skeptical. And then when I heard how it was defined, I'm like, yeah, I got that. And then I also consider myself a torture survivor because of my childhood. My older brother randomly beat me up whenever he wanted, and I woke up quite scared often. I consider myself a torture survivor, and I'm a work in progress still. I'm not a guru in this, but I feel like I'm at a point where I can talk about what it's done for me. So early on, let's see, I drew this in 2021. I started doing art therapy, and this was a picture I drew of what my childhood was like. So it was just like horrific sometimes. And all these feelings and being like petrified and scared, I just kind of buried. So I spent decades just being dissociated from what happened in my childhood. So this is like I called it art therapy redo. This was also at a similar time. This never happened, but I drew it like as if I pretended this actually happened, where I actually talked to my mother, say, "Hey Ma, I woke up this morning feeling terrified, and I was wondering to myself, how do I not get beat up today? Is this normal?" And but I never did that. So what I did was I drew this picture to help myself imagine if I actually had a parent that I felt like I could talk to and then just be really honest. And in the picture, she actually is turning and looking at me, whereas my mother often just had her back. She was doing the dish shelf and had her back. So I was just like, I'd never really even thought I could talk to adults. And this is another sort of a redo image of when I remember going to school in first grade and we had lunch on the front steps of the school building and my mother put apricot baby food in my lunch and I loved apricot baby food, but I was so embarrassed that I was eating baby food that I never said anything to anybody. I was like hiding the fact that I loved apricot baby food. But anyway, I did this redo and I'm like, oh my God, I fucking love apricot baby food. So this was actually helpful for me to like reimagine if I would have, been able to be more authentic at that time. So I presume a fair amount of knowledge of the listeners today of what IFS and how IFS works. But I mean, I thought I would run through the basic structure. So an IFS therapist is going to try to identify protectors and be very gentle. And then protectors, when you ask, finally, yes, you can ask them all kinds of questions. But there's this one question: what are you afraid would happen if you weren't protecting or doing your job? And the answer to that question leads to an exile. I'm afraid you'd get hurt. I'm afraid you'd be disappointed. I'm afraid whatever. And that leads to the exile. And exiles are always treated quite carefully and only with the petition, the permissions of a protector. And I'm gonna Dick Short still is gonna just stick with that. Like I'm gonna just say get a professional therapist or get someone who knows how to do this stuff. Although I'm able to do this on my own, and not everyone can do these kinds of things on their own. So then once we spend time, identify an exile, we spend time just being with and connecting with the exile. Is there anything you want me to know? I'm just going to want to be present with you. And then we want to move that exile to safety, or at least ask, do you feel safe where you are? If not, where would you like to go and feel safe? And then really get the idea that the exile feels like for example, I get what the exile went through. So there's a deep connection. And then would you like to unburden from other pain or that experience? And then after the unburdening, there's inviting, or I call it re-nurturing, number 5 there. Re-nurturing the exile with what would you like to bring in? You got rid of some of the hurt and shame. What do you want to bring in? Well, maybe I want to bring in courage and I want to bring in confidence and I want to bring in clarity. So these are some self qualities. And then we turn to the back to the protector in the beginning. We say, hey, take a look at this little guy now, or girl, or whatever, and see how they're doing. They're doing much better. You probably don't need to do your job as much, or would you like to do a different job? And then that's always curious. And then to keep connecting, keep tuning in, keep being attuned with those parts and those exiles until they get a feel and trust for the system. So I call it healing on the cheap. So once I got Bonnie Weiss's book, um, her book entitled, I highly recommend it, Self-Therapy Workbook, Exercise Book for IFS Process. And I heard, oh, I can do partners. So I did have a dedicated, it was level one therapist for 6 months. In the beginning, I was seeing her once a week. And we did some deep work. I did a lot of crying. After a session, I couldn't even really function a whole lot. I had a hard time talking to people. I had to go for a walk and just be really gentle with myself for 24 hours because a lot of stuff was coming out. But I also learned I could work with partners. And I was working with a partner, different partner. I still work with partners about 2, 3 times a week. And in the beginning, I was just doing protector, 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 protector. 'Cause I was just really afraid of going near exiles because I was so warned. So a protector could be my perfectionist part or my analytical part or my inner critic. And then I would just ask a whole bunch of questions and get to know protectors. And after about a year, exiles just naturally started, I think organically started coming out. I did not focus a lot on I didn't even believe that there was a self in the beginning. I didn't believe in self energy, calmness, whatever else. I was just focusing on getting to know protectors. And what happened is, as I was hearing their story, I started developing compassion and more curiosity about them. Um, I already mentioned I was kind of scared of going to exiles. Okay, I already mentioned that, but they started coming out. And then I met somebody about a year and a half ago who was doing self-led therapy, self-led partnered sessions. And I was like, wow. So then I started working on my own, but I would be with a partner. So the partner would kind of be an observer. And then at the end of each session, we would like compare notes and stuff like that. Um, so I'm going to show a map, and I think I can do this. Let me see. Okay, all right. I'm going to show my parts map, and I hope this is helpful for folks. So one of my therapists early on said, take a piece of paper and draw a heart in the middle. Sorry if the lighting's not so good. Take a piece of paper and draw a heart in the middle, and then start drawing parts around that. So, and the heart represents self. So I drew self here. Yeah, there we go. Better lighting. And then I started drawing um, like this is Mr. Analytics. This is a very analytical part of mine. And then I have my inner critic. And then I would also, when I spent time with him, what did you want to do instead? Like be a I'd rather be your cheerleader than your inner critic. And then this is a serious part. I have a serious part. And then he would rather be my fun events planner. And then Mr. Agreeable. This is like a caretaker, friendly to everybody. And he'd rather be real and authentic than just go, and then Mr. Perfect, my real world part, my worrying part, my juggling part. Countless parts. This is what I call gateways. So there were a lot of parts that were just vigilant. They were just always looking and they would tell which parts to kick in depending on certain situations. And then I call this here my exile blob. And these were all just exiles, hurt, shame, fear, anxiety, confusion, loneliness, feeling unsafe, feeling overlooked, abused, abandoned, neglected, guilty, disappointed, sad, all sorts of emotions I never learned how to be with. And then all these are notes from different exiles and all the different ways they just felt like they didn't matter. They were on their own. They were torture survivors. No one took care of me. Why would somebody bring me into this world and not take care of me? And then this map has turned into here, this smaller map. You can see the heart in the middle, and this is what I call more like attunement. So I have an attunement part, I have a body part, I have a feelings part, I have a nervous system part, and I have an authenticity part. And I spend time with these parts, and I can just pause, like even right now, and I can attune with my body and where's my authenticity now? Or who needs care? And then so I care for who's vulnerable, lonely, hurt. And then I call this emotional regulation. So I listen and I'm caring and I'm being present and I'm being compassionate. Being present for me has been quite powerful. I don't I don't actually like the term emotional regulation because it just seems a bit sterile. But that for me is what emotional regulation is attunement and tuning into to my body. Let me get back here. So some examples of I have a lot of exiles. I have far more protectors than exiles, but some of them was a little guy in the backyard playing in a sandbox. When I first walked up to him as an adult, he looked at me and he said, "Who are you? What the fuck do you want?" Very guarded, extremely defensive, didn't trust adults at all. I had a little kitten that was petrified in a tree, clinging to the tree, wouldn't come down. I had a baby monkey that was grabbing my neck and just would cling to my neck and never and not let go. And then I had some different types of exiles. Um, there was this hyper loving puppy that was just bouncy and loving and excited, which didn't really get to express itself as a child. I had like I call it a little doughboy, like this plump little guy who went around self-absorbed and kind of a little bit pompous and didn't really care what people thought of him. So I was quite surprised to find some of these exiles. And then I had a neurotic prisoner, like someone going back and forth in a cage. So I met a lot of angry exiles. They were just raging with feeling of violation. I don't know that I actually worked with a particular part called anger, but I had these exiles, and I really like Kubler-Ross's stages of grief and anger, and just being one of those. And so I spent a lot of time imagining like smashing things with sledgehammers, or I would do angry swimming, I would do angry bike riding, angry push-ups, I'd go pick up the couch. I just had to get this stuff out of my body, which was really old, embedded anger and grief. I mean, it was just I spent, I think, all of 2024 different levels of grieving and just saying to myself, I'm grieving, I'm grieving. I would walk down the street thinking, I'm grieving, I'm grieving, I'm grieving. And after like 2, 3 weeks of just keep saying that to myself, I actually felt better because I wasn't burying it. I was acknowledging that I was in a state of grieving. There's my happy, loving puppy. It's in there. It's great to let this puppy out. So this is a common exile for me. It was an amorphous being who didn't get to have shape. It was forgotten and left on its own. It was buried. It was repressed. It wouldn't talk to anybody. I have to spend a lot of time with this part. I would ask this part, can I come and just sit and be with you? And this part was like, why would you want to be with me? Nobody wants to be with me. And then so it took so long of just sitting there and being present with this part, and this part started to trust me after a while. Um, and I had some protectors watching this. They were watching me be compassionate, and then after sort of unburdening this exile, like this. So this is like a picture I made of a AI made it for me of a protector part, because this protector was so totally mystified of how I could have compassion, because my this protector, I think it might have been my inner critic or my perfectionist part, was did had nothing, had no idea how to be compassionate. So my protectors knew how to be aggressive. And when they saw me or self, whatever, being compassionate, they were just really taken aback and felt defeated. They felt, oh, I don't know how to, I don't want to be a warrior anymore. I don't want to be aggressive, but I don't know how to be compassionate either. So after spending enough time with this little guy, um, I gave him a sledgehammer and he smashed a hole in the wall and the light was coming through and he got out of the room. And then what happened was the light sort of represented love and compassion because this little guy did not trust anyone could be compassionate and loving toward him. And that was, I mean, that's probably still for me in general. I still have part that really struggle with, oh, really me? Like just really suspect of anything like love or compassion. And then I got to this point where I was just felt myself basking in the light of my own self-worth. Like with enough love and compassion, I just felt inherently more worthy. And it's hard. I'm using a lot of imagery because it's hard for me to put this stuff into words. So I want to talk about attachment. And I think for me, the best definition of attachment is the idea like, oh, I've been working with somebody for years and we grew attached to each other. And for me, that's the kind of imagery I want to have with my ideal parent, a parent that we're sort of attached. We see through each other. We know how to end each other's sentences. And probably people know this. There's different attachment styles. There's a basic split from insecure attachment styles to secure attachment. I'm not going to go through all these details, but there's some of the early researchers. And Dan Brown was for me the pivotal figure because he has an ideal parent figure protocol. It's on YouTube. It's an 11-minute meditation. And I did that because I read somewhere where he says if you do this for 6 months to 2.5 years, people start seeing real results. So I figured, all right, this guy is at Harvard. He's a professor. I'm going to trust him. And I did it. And uh, and I've done it for 2.5 years straight. And it's still powerful for me, but I've had different stages. Like in the beginning, I had a hard time imagining who these ideal parents were. Um, and I originally imagined somebody I dated who was just really kind to me, and I imagined this priest who was really compassionate, like as like my ideal mother and father. And then that switched, and then I had indigenous, and then it over the 2.5 years that like my the imagination switched. And this is kind of what Dan Brown says. The imagination is very powerful and allow it to be amorphous. Now I know some people have a hard time with this, and this is what George Haas calls pinch points, which actually um, people who have a hard time with the meditation actually should keep doing it. Because what happens is if you're having a hard time with the meditation, it means those are places in our memory where we can't even imagine. And so what we want to do is we want to start pushing out our capacity to imagine and some people suggest imagining an ideal self. So if somebody can't imagine actually an ideal parent who can listen and be attuned and be present, then start imagining an ideal self, but just keep at it. So when I first started, I did this a quiz here at the Attachment Project. I've recently heard that there are better tests. But I mean, I did it, and then after 2 years, my sister said, "Why don't you take the test again?" So I did, and then it came out secure. So I was actually in shock. I mean, I felt like I had been rewired and I was better, but I didn't actually think I would get the numbers that illustrated it. So the five great functions of attachment are safety and protection. So my parents are providing me a safe and protective environment. They are attuned. I just love attunement. I think attunement is is the key dimension of all these. They know when I'm up, they know when I'm down, they know when I'm sad, they know how to be there for me. And then that leads to soothing and comfort. They know when I need soothing and comfort, and they know how to soothe me and how I like to be soothed and comforted. And then expressing delight. When I first heard this, I thought it was outrageous. An adult actually expressing delight in who I am, not even and beyond the things I do, but even my own being. And then supporting and offering encouragement for self-development. If I want to, I don't know, take tap dance lessons or play a musical instrument or something or just try something new, they're going to be supportive and encouraging of that. I mean, these are all dimensions that are part of the meditation if you listen to the Dan Brown stuff. Now, what I find is IFS, see the stuff highlighted here in yellow? IFS is really great at safety and protection, attunement, soothing, and comfort. I mean, a lot of this stuff is how exiles are sort of unburdened and how I'm present and compassionate to exiles. But IFS is not so great at expressing delights, support, and encouragement, and for self and development. And so this is where, for me, IFS and attachment theory just complement each other quite amazingly. I got some quotes that I like. When your parts start to trust yourself, they open more space for you to be in your body. When that's the case, you feel sensations and emotions more. So this has been almost paradoxical, although I have more tools to deal with my emotional states and to be more authentic. Also, I'm having more emotions. So and my body actually feels differently. I feel like I have more direct access to what's happening in my body. Um, so I have to say I have no models for the amount of self-acceptance and compassion I needed for all this. And I mean, I can't, I absolutely, I can just keep repeating this. I've never seen anyone in society, not even, in religious circumstances, that illustrated or demonstrated or gave me a model of how much self-acceptance and compassion I needed to just continue to have compassion on myself and my exiles. And I have some quotes from George Haas. He's kind of leading up some of the attachment stuff now. Kind of maybe you could say he grabbed the baton from Dan Brown. Secure people go around and they're like the world is full of people capable and willing to meet my needs. This is, I mean, I've never even thought this in this kind of a way that there's all kinds of people around who can who can meet my needs. Um, I mean, to be honest, I never even thought I actually had needs. So that was a big journey, just admitting that I actually had needs, because I repressed so many needs as a child. This is another one from George Haas. To be authentic, I must risk abandonment. And to risk abandonment, I must be able to emotionally regulate. So I'm going to have a really hard time being authentic if I don't have this sort of, if I haven't been attuned, if I haven't been loved, if I'm not self-attuned, if I'm not believing and confident in myself, and if I didn't have a parent that could model all that stuff for me. And this one I like from Stephen Hausner, who does family constellations work. There's only one health. I can only be healthy in a healthy society. I can only be healthy in a healthy family, and health can be contagious. So I know in many ways, my father fought in World War II. He was a Marine. They came out of the Great Depression. I mean, the 60s. I mean, there was a culture of of like tough love. And it just did not work for me, any of that. So we're actually at the half hour, but I want to show some videos. Oops, I gotta get out of here. So this is of a kitten.
This kitten was rescued from a very unloving home, and these foster cat moms know exactly how to earn her trust. She was persistent, gently approaching the kitten even when it tried to fight back, and it's clear that love and kindness can help heal even the most hurt hearts.
Yeah, I get quite sentimental when I see that. And that it just, for me, it was how much I had to just be patient and present with my exiles. And this is, for me, this is another one that's like
Crooked, gappy, or practically
demonstrates
perfect, your
how
smile makes you,
I've had to
you.
be
Now
so
make it
patient and
whiter in
understanding
just
with
one day.
exiles.
Oral-B
Um,
Clinical Intensive Whitening has
After
unique
this
ionic
commercial.
technology that lifts stains and prevents new ones. For whiter teeth in one day that everyone loves. Clinical Intensive Whitening from Oral-B.
After spending their entire lives indoors and in cages, these beagles who survived being experimented on in laboratories got to experience sunlight and grass for the first time. Some of the liberated pups weren't sure what to make of the outdoors, and the grass felt funny under their paws. It took some time for them to be comfortable with the volunteers from the Beagle Freedom Project after the life they endured, but now they're as happy as can be. The Beagle Freedom Project negotiates with labs around the world to secure the release of animals in order to give them a forever home after their time being tested.
And I have one more, which is so the attachment system kind of toggles the exploration system on and off. And so what I mean by that is if I feel secure, then I can explore things in my life.
He's coming to find another banana. Catch it on video.
So this is a baby rhino. When it runs away from its mother, it's exploring, and then it pauses, and maybe it senses threat, and then it runs back to its mother. And it keeps doing this, toggling back and forth. All right, now I'm going to go. Now I feel secure with my mom, and then when I have some sense of security, secure attachment, then I can go explore the world again.
Just doing the afternoon exercise. That's Max and Eddie. I think my office. You can smell it. Yeah, they used to always go to the hole. But you see already she was coming.
So I'm going to stop there. You kind of get the point. And all right, these are all my thank yous. Dick Schwartz, Bonnie Weiss, Dan Brown, Alice Miller, Basil Vanderkook, John Bradshaw, Naomi Alder. Anyway, all kinds of scholars. And I'm just going to stop now. Open for comments, questions, critiques, discussion, and there's my contact info. So yeah, open for questions if anybody has them. I'll reopen the chat.
I just want to say that was a great presentation, Jean. Thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Oh, thanks.
Strength and hope.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, cheers, thanks a lot. Can I just thank you for the presentation? It was really good and really informative. Can I just ask you a question? Is that okay? Just a quick
Yes,
sort
yes.
of
This is question. Any clarifying question? Any kind of questions? Yeah, go ahead.
question.
And discuss.
I'm sorry if it seems too personal, but like obviously it's up to you. You know, I don't want to encroach boundaries. But I wondered if you could draw some kind of comparison to doing this work and then the the rigor of the ACA program, which is sort of a daily spiritual handing over, step 4, etc. Do you advocate for the two approaches to be combined or?
So I think, so first of all, I don't know ACA really, really well.
Okay, that's cool.
So
Yeah,
I do know that there's a teenager, there's inner child, there's ideal parent, or a loving parent. So my sort of understanding is that ACA is a little bit clunkier than IFS. IFS was going to have a lot more details. Um,
yeah.
and so but I think too that, I did certain things on my journey and certain things spoke to me. So I think there's potential in a lot of these and so much right now. I mean, and actually it's a very exciting time to be alive with the amount of psychology of healing and things available to us. But so at least through my journey, and I did some 12 steps. But when IFS hit, I was just mesmerized and like it just grabbed me and pulled me right in.
Hmm.
And the attachment stuff.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm presently not feeling like any questions are too personal. So
Okay.
if anybody wants to have any other questions or you're welcome, Tazzy.
Hi, Jean. Thank you so much for this presentation. It really did clarify some things, but I still have questions about attachment because I haven't read anything about that. I'm 2 years into ACA, still on step 8. But what when you say attachment, you're not thinking how I attach to other people. It's attaching to yourself. Is that what I'm hearing?
So for me, attachment, it's a little bit like that. But for me, the way attachment theory is developed is essentially between the primary caregiver and the child. So generally, primary caregivers were our mothers. And then was my mother there for me? Was my mother attuned to me? Was my mother able to say, I see you're angry. Do you want to talk about that and share about how you're angry? And then when that sort of thing happens, what I'm learning is, oh, I do have anger. My mother is affirming and clarifying that I have anger. I'm learning that I have anger. I know she's letting me express my anger. And then what happens is when I have somebody modeling for me this attunement, then I can attune to myself as an adult. I mean, it takes a long time, but and then for me, the irony of a secure attachment is the more I'm attached to my parent, the more I can be detached from my parent. And I learn self-attunement, self-attachment and I can go off into the world feeling like a secure being, like that little baby rhino who can go off and explore the world and not be terrified. I mean, I spent so much energy just being vigilant all the time. And now I'm losing this whole need to be so vigilant and secure. It's quite amazing to me how much energy it took. And then now that energy is being freed up to do more imaginative and creative type things. I'm
Thank you
not
so much.
okay. Thanks,
Yeah,
Amanda.
basically summed up, the more attached I am, the more uh, detached I can be and the more energy I can put into my life. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have another question.
Yeah, go
Uh,
for it, Janie.
I just thought with your sort of background, like as obviously doing a lot of study and PhD level, do you see a lot of I'm just kind of going through a process myself of I don't like all the ACA sort of phrasing, but it is in a sense sort of coming out of denial really of of having very highly narcissistic parents and going through that guilt of trying to detach while sort of still going through these bouts of abuse and the impending sort of end of their lives and how that looks and the guilt around that. Because for myself, I need to completely really detach. But with in the context of adults having things like chronic illnesses, and I know Gabor Mate has done a lot of work around that. Is that something that you've come across, and can this work? If you do this, can it, obviously the polyvagal theory, but can it heal the immune system, or do you see any evidence of that?
There is evidence, and I have seen evidence of people physically getting better. So I don't
Yeah.
know if you've heard of John Sarno's work on healing
Yeah.
back pain. And then also there's new research and results coming from Dick Schwartz's group on arthritis. And I think even Bessel van der Kolk talked about how trauma gets stuck in the body and it becomes chronic type stuff. But just but also one thing I forgot to mention was that when I was doing the attachment stuff, I think one of the things I was doing was I was having these ideal parents and I was still holding anger toward my old parents. And then I did a family constellation retreat, and then what I ended up doing was thanking my parents for what they
Hmm.
gave me. And it really blew my mind. Dear mom, dear dad, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything you gave me. And I take it. But what you didn't give me, I'm going to get somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
So the ideal parent protocol isn't to sort of replace it, whatever else, but it's sort of to say, and then actually, because I do this sort of imaginary conversations with my old parents, and they've come to the point where they say, yeah, we were in a particular situation. Go ahead, find some new parents, find some people who can provide you for what you need. So that's sort of thinking, I mean, the imagination has just been extremely powerful
Mm.
for me. But I also don't underestimate, like if my parents were still around mistreating me and if they were getting near death, I think that would be challenging no matter if you're a perfectly secure human being. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I get you. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's not, nobody deserves yeah, to be, invalidated and yeah, and shamed. Yeah, that I think, yeah, I believe it damages the brain. That's what a friend said to me, but I'm not sure. Apparently
Oh,
there's science
I
around
mean, yeah, it would. I mean, I can't. The amount of hurt and shame, and I was so afraid to be disappointed and afraid to disappoint other people. I mean, the vigilance. It's hard for me to even describe how much energy I put into being vigilant, and making sure I was safe.
Yeah. So did it take you having a geographical kind of, I did miss a little bit in part, so sorry if I've missed this, but did you, obviously it was, sounds very traumatic and negative, your childhood experiences. Did you sort of detach in adolescence sort of thing, and go no contact and that kind of thing, and begin your work? You said you'd
Oh,
been
well,
working.
I just dissociated. I smoked marijuana all through my teen years. And
Yeah.
so I pretended I was one person and then I was sneaky. The rest, I lived a duplicitous life. I don't recommend it, but I look back now and I see, oh, the marijuana was self-medication. It helped me to survive. And then I got extremely religious. I did another 10 years of being fanatically religious. And that was another way of finding comfort. It wasn't helping me to actually deal with my stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So I can only have compassion on me and those stages of how I survived, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, part of me could
Yeah.
judge all that, but I mean, I can't, but now that I've done this sort of journey, I can only come at it with
Yeah.
compassion, really.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You said you had done 12 steps. Was that like like for the marijuana?
It was many years ago, and I would say I'm an addict. That was the
Yeah.
language I would use
Yeah.
because a therapist at the time said, "You never did the 12 steps. I think you ought to do those." And I liked it. It was very authentic. People were very honest, and I didn't. there weren't a lot of authentic, honest people in my life, you know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Janie, I
Yeah.
see, is it Sarai, has their hand
Yes,
up.
thank you. Thank you, Jean. This is my first time here. Thank you. I was so grateful to find the link here and well to join. I have a well, I am new to the steps. I am on ACA for the past 2 months, and in the past month, I am learning about IFS and polyvagal, which, my God, it's amazing and overwhelming at the same time. But it's a light, a light in my life. I am getting to learn about myself, and um, I am not religious. I am starting to be spiritual for the first time in my life. And I would like to know how, if you are using spirituality to help and to understand a little bit of this IFS process. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'm gonna say no. Um, I've had a pretty big journey with spirituality, and uh, although I find now when I'm in a place of self and calm and curious, and spirituality for me is just becoming presence. Like I could pause right now, so let's all just have a moment of silence, and I can attune with my body and try to come from a place of calm and curiosity. So much in the past, when I've turned to spirituality or religion or even prayer, I found now when I find myself tempted to do that, I find I'm avoiding hurt. There's some sort of hurt. And then if I could engage with either my spiritual practice. So I'm not saying I'm not like dissing spirituality, but I'm saying that whenever I turn to spirituality, I should also ask myself, am I bypassing, spiritually bypassing somehow? So I think the two can be held together, but I want to double check, am I avoiding pain that I don't know how to sit with?
Thank you. Yeah, I am doing my best to do the same because I don't want to go back or to trigger that a spiritual, religious trauma I've been carrying. But yes, I feel attuned to what you're saying. Every time I want to connect, to get to discover to another part of me, I will meditate. And I think so far my connection to my higher power is meditation and connecting and getting in contact to self. That is
Yeah,
how I can feel my spirituality nowadays.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else? Thoughts, comments, critiques? I'm an academic, so we like critiquing each other. So,
I have a comment or a thought. My mother was my abuser at a young age. And then later on, I don't know if it was 11, 12, 15, she became my religious education teacher. And I just read her report card last night, and it just blew me away. She thanked me for being a great teacher's helper and everything, great stars. What I remember from that class is I was just totally dissociated. I didn't understand what she was trying to teach. You know, I don't think it was, I think, anyway, I was going to say, I don't think it's religious abuse, but anyway, she said, but you need to do your thing. You need to learn what you need to learn, And so I know she picked up on my dissociation, right? And that I wasn't getting it. But just having that piece of paper just makes I feel so angry, you know, and because I wasn't getting what I needed, but she couldn't obviously give it. And what I found was this sort of thing I like to just burn. I've only since a retreat about 3 weeks ago, I learned after I burned it, I could let go of it. And I feel like, should I just burn that piece of paper? or should I hold it for evidence?
Mhm.
What do you think?
No, I like it. I mean, you could have asked me 30 years ago, and I would have said I had a happy childhood. It was great. I mean, but I was just completely dissociated. I could not actually consider that I had an unhappy childhood because if I had considered I had an unhappy childhood, I had nothing to hang on to. It was, I often felt sort of some sort of solace in my existence because otherwise, my existence wasn't that great. And again, it so much just led to the fact that I didn't have modeling for how to be with my emotions. Um, yeah. I mean, it's a kind of a nice story that you have.
I kind of toggle between wanting to, um, well, yeah, so those two things. And I was really wondering, what do you think it's better just to burn it and forget it or to hold on to it?
I guess I would sit with your parts and your
Yeah.
protectors and
And
see. Maybe there's a polarization there, and maybe you have burn it, don't burn it, and maybe have those parts sit at a table and give their points of views, and listen.
mhm, that's interesting. And last thing I was going to say was that compared to what you're talking about, I always knew from the age of 11 that I was not having a happy childhood, you know,
Yeah,
and that I was, and I had many reasons to say, this is not okay, this is not okay. And I, I think it's, everybody's different. Yeah, thanks.
yeah, you're welcome. So there's a question on psychedelics, and what I've heard about psychedelics is they're really powerful at getting protectors to calm and to kind of give space. And so for me, that sounds really powerful. If somebody's having a hard time with getting protectors to mm, give space or release their roles a little bit, then then cool. If that could work under a therapeutic guidance. I mean, for somebody like me now, who I'm not getting a real hard time. When I spend enough time with a protector, it's okay. Yeah, go ahead. You can talk to the exile. So, yeah, I guess it would depend on the context. And then let's see, there was another question in the chat. Do you think people can truly be fully recovered, or are most of us often in the process of? I think people can truly recover. To be honest, I'm getting a hint of wow, this is what it feels like to not be vigilant all the darn time and to trust who I am and to think about this. Wow, I can be authentic. I would have never said this 5 years ago in public, but now I feel like I can say stuff because I'd be like, oh no, I'm going to say this and I'm going to brace for the pushback. So I'm not feeling that as much. BB, let me do one more question in the chat. Was there any negativity from people around you as a new way of being got visible to others? Like people saying you're now pretending to be kind, or the interesting thing is as I become this new person, I was expecting more pushback and more shock, but I'm not getting that like I thought I would. I guess maybe I have parts a little bit scared about becoming a new person. And also, I've been using NVC. I didn't talk much about NVC. NVC has been really helpful to help me communicate in a new way. And so I'm just extremely appreciative for NVC. And even some of my exiles, they wanted me to teach them NVC so they could learn how to talk to adults or talk to my parents. So good question. BB, Bridget?
Hey, Jean. Jean, sorry. I always do. It's been amazing, like walking alongside you and from a distance, actually, and hearing your growth. I've always admired your contributions, especially your openness and willingness to share. And I really appreciated this today. Um, a lot of the visuals were very helpful for me.
Mhm.
And part of me is curious if you'd elaborate a bit on, uh, you talked about the vigilance. if you could maybe elaborate on how that may have shown up in your life, and perhaps was that a part, a specific part, or a few parts? If you're okay with it, I'm just sort of like asking for maybe an illustrated example, if that makes sense.
Thanks. Good question. So I thought I developed a whole new category of parts I was going to write to Dick Schwartz. Besides protectors and exiles, there's gateway parts. I call them gateway parts. And gateway parts were actually protectors who would sense what was going around me and sense how secure I felt or how vigilant I would have to be. And then they would tell which protectors to kick in. Oh, be friendly now, be agreeable. Okay. Or Mr. Analytics, be Mr. Perfect now. And so, and just as an example of this, I was working in an office area. It was an open space office. I always knew who was in the office space. I mean, must have been about 20 different seats. I always knew who was there. I had a first name relationship with them. I would say good morning. I was friendly with everybody. And then one day my colleague says, like, you know everybody. Like you like friendly and talk to everybody, you know everybody. And on one hand, I could see, oh, yeah, I'm friendly, I'm likable. That's a major protector. I would almost know when somebody left the room and went to the bathroom and then I realized I'm living in this extremely vigilant sort of state, like all the time. Um, and so that's one example. Also, I used to live in a gated community, and it was a poor HIV/AIDS with and so there's the gate, and then there's the person that is in the little office at the gate, and they call it in Spanish, it's called el vigilante. So the vigilant, the security guard, we call it security guard, and he would work there, and he would look at every car that came in, and would have to stop and check with him, and I just was feeling like I'm el vigilante. I am who gets to come into my internal system and who stays out of my internal system. So just a lot of energy doing all that.
Thank you for I resonate. That's why I really heard that. And I think it goes back to, or I know it goes back to not being safe. It's that secure attachment. I love that rhino, the little rhino, baby rhino video, because it's such a great example. And it also makes me sad because I did not have that. I could explore, but I also noticed that I became very careless. Like, I'm very fortunate that I remained safe all my life, because I put myself in some pretty bad situations that I probably wouldn't have had I had uh, parenting um, that actually helped me understand safe, not safe, but also emotionally it's the same thing. It's like there's the physical safety and also the emotional safety. And I really love that IFS is teaching me how to really, and also, loving parent ACA, but IFS is really teaching me how to turn toward and have self energy to start to parent and say, hey, that might not be, let's, and also the invitation to talk about it. But the vigilance, I'm glad that you talked about it, because I really, really, really want to hone in on that part and give that part some space. And I think that just more around that question, was it one part, or did you, or multiple parts that hold vigilance, would you say?
Well, I had multiple parts. I had
That
multiple
help,
parts that were super vigilant. And then I had to spend time with those exiles. I spend a lot
and
of time being present with those exiles.
those were the gateway parts, you call them. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. And thanks for taking the time with the question, because it's helping me sort of unravel a little bit. So thank you.
Yeah, and what became really important for me was to obviously really connect and be present with the other, and then do a redo. How would I redo this if I could? And then reimagining even the redos. Yeah. We're at the
Thank
hour. As anybody wants to leave, you can leave. Well, obviously people can leave anytime they want anyway. But I could stay another 10 minutes if anybody's got more questions or comments, thoughts, or reflections.
I have a question, if I may, Tiziana.
Sure, sure.
Hi, I'm sorry, I was late. And my question is, I'm from Italy, and for what I know, IFS is not something that is already here. And so I'm guessing if I can start with reading a book and just take time with my inners, or as I think therapist is necessary, is mandatory, to work also for redoing, because of course I'm learning from Loving Parent Guidebook of ACA, compassion, self-love, listening, but redoing, I really do not know how to do. Because,
Yeah.
for example, my teen is it's angry because her most beautiful years are gone, and my parents took them. So how can I handle? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would recommend the book No Bad Parts. There's some exercises in there. IFS for me, I mean I learned a lot about IFS, but at some point I realized I need to practice it. And even still it's a daily practice for me. I mean almost like a religion, but I want to be careful about saying that. And then there's other Jay Early, Dick Schwartz has a workbook now, and then this is the Bonnie Weiss workbook, which I worked a lot with. So it gives an introduction. It has pages for unblending. It has pages for protected parts. It has pages for exiles. And then I would say my really intensive work was directly with an IFS trained therapist. And then I got a sense of it, and I started working with partners. So the other thing with partners is that I love this quote. It's a bit anthropological. So, to live an alternative life, I need an alternative community. So to continue to connect with like us and other folks on this journey and to use those friendships to help support us into becoming the people, more authentic people that we want to be. And I totally can identify with, I think, what you suggested, a feeling like I got robbed of my life and having a lot of anger toward my parents and stuff like that. But then after I was, because there was a lot of anger, but after expressing some of that, realizing, they did the best they could, even though it wasn't the best for me. And so I'm going to kind of get what I need somewhere else because I can't go to them and expect them to give me things that they just ain't. And in some ways, my parents, they put their protectors into me, so they're handing down the way they survived in the world, and it doesn't work for me. So the hard part is like, oh, how do I go find the things that I didn't get? Yeah, but I do feel like I empathize with your comment, your question.
Thank you. Of course, I know that I'm grieving, and after I will ask myself, so what? Okay, I'm grieving. I'm sorry for what happened, that I was forced to work, and it was extremely dysfunctional. But now what? So now it's, it's, it's up to me. Sorry
Yeah,
for the
well,
noise.
yes, and I'm grieving, and now what? And now what? I'm grieving, and now what? And now what? So you know what? The grieving can last a long time. But to deny that I'm grieving, that's where I don't want to be. Yeah, good question. Yeah, thanks. Rita.
Hi, John. Thank
Uh,
you for the meeting.
Yeah, welcome.
I wanted to ask, but do you think that we can get benefits from the meditation of the protocol? I don't remember the name of the protocol for the secure parent attachment.
Totally, totally.
And without,
I still do it almost every day. Yeah. Go ahead.
but without IFS, do you think it would be beneficial or the same without IFS?
Uh, I think it's beneficial without IFS. Yeah. But it's beneficial with IFS too. So, so yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, grieving is big. I spent a whole year. Yeah, I recommend I'm grieving, I'm grieving, I'm grieving.
There's so much to grieve, though. Now that I think about it, like, do you just, oh, I'm just grieving it all type of thing?
I grieve it all, and then I grieve dimensions of it, and then I be patient with myself. I mean, with that, when I go around saying I'm grieving, there's also part of me that says I got to be patient with myself. I got to be patient and gentle with myself when I'm grieving. I mean, I know even from the grief work, if let's say, one of your colleagues is one of their parent died or their best friend died or they're going through a divorce, we're going to be gentle with those people, right? And so likewise to be gentle with myself if I know I'm going through these things. It doesn't always jive well with our inner critic, right? Because our inner critic is, I could do this or I got to be like John Wayne and nothing affects me and I'm tough, right? That's not being human though. I mean, dissociating is part of being human, but we want to sort of titrate and gently live into the grief.
I'd like to share my first experience with acupuncture. I went from like black and white living where I was definitely dissociating. I came out of that session and I noticed the trees were color. It was like fall, and I was able to smile at people and be present for the first time in that way. And I'm now an acupuncturist, and it's really wild to see. I mean, it's just the world keeps opening up, and I ask myself, you suggested psychedelics, but I think acupuncture does the same thing.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know much about acupuncture, so I'm, I've heard
They're doing research on it. Yeah.
some things can only be cured by acupuncture. I don't know much detail about that. Yeah. Thanks, Francis. Any other quiet people holding back? Any parts holding back questions? So people also probably have my phone number. I can share again. There's my email. If anybody wants to connect or talk more. Um, and any more thoughts, questions, you could type something in the chat if you want. Thanks for all the kind words. Thanks. Thanks, B. Stop sharing.
Hi, I have a question. This is Jackie. Um, I'm the one usually the part scared and shy and hold back, but I'm going to ask you, um, how did you crack open the heavy dissociation? I mean, I heard you went to the IFS trained therapist for half a year, doing really important heavy work. But how about if someone who don't have that kind of access?
I would start finding partners to explore with. Partners can be quite challenging, right? Like, starting with a stranger, but we want to feel comfortable with that partner. Maybe start reading the Bonnie Weiss's book with somebody slowly and being gentle with each other. And then that's a great question. How did I crack open? The dissociation was for me. I hadn't thought of this question like this, so I'm appreciating the question. It was a slow cracking and a slow opening because I don't think because I didn't know how to be with my emotions. I don't think I could have just one day cracked open my dissociation and have this flood of emotional energy. Yeah. So I think sometimes it was like arm wrestling someone the same strength as me. A certain amount would crack open and then I would try to handle that and there was to be extremely and then there was all this waving of grief and sadness and anger. So it's a very and it reminds me of yeah, Bonnie, it's Bonnie Weiss, the book. Here it is if you want to Bonnie Weiss Self-Therapy Workbook. Yeah. I recommend getting the hardbound because the PDF, I have the PDF, but there's pages missing. So yeah, good question. And yeah, a lot of gentleness. And again, I had no modeling for how much compassion and self-acceptance I needed for myself.
Thank you. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, welcome.
Hi, Gene. Can I come in?
Sure, Bash.
Hi, thanks for your share. Really appreciate that. Given some hope, and I've also just started doing that. Is it that Dan Brown, the YouTube meditation you gave me? Yeah, and I've just had my IFS therapy as well. Well, I'm in a situation. I got married to somebody quite quickly, and at the process of getting married, I was quite open and trusting and got in. But as soon as I seen a bit of the personality come out and felt that she didn't need me, she was quite independent, my avoidance just took over. Do you know what I mean? All of a sudden, I'm in trauma, PTSD all over again. And, I've been going through therapy for the last 2 years to get through this. And she comes across as secure until a couple of weeks ago, where she broke down herself. We need help, and she has come to couples therapy now. But I realize she's an anxious attachment, and my parts don't like. Because I had a mother who was emotionally unavailable, present, absent, in fact, and rejecting of emotional connection or anything. She comes from a different background where she had that connection, with the family and everything, but my parts do not like the neediness. I get overwhelmed with it all, and just get overwhelmed with someone needing me or wanting me. When she says "I love you," I just feel cringed as well. And I don't know. My parts are probably trying to protect. It is soothing, but I'm just tired. I don't know where to go with it all. I'm thinking, when does this ever end? You know what I mean? It explains why I avoided relationships, full stop. But this is my second marriage now, and
Yeah.
I'm going through the same process again. If I didn't have the therapy IFS in ACA, I probably would have. Part of me is trying to drive her away, thinking she's going to leave anyway. So just don't get too close. It doesn't fear abandonment, it expects abandonment,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I don't know. I thought I'd just share that. I don't know where I'm at with it. It has got better since she entered couples therapy, but even in the couples therapy, my parts have come out. The protectors, the exiles, I think, the shames come out and feeling not good enough. You know what I mean? And I've actually felt vulnerable, allowing the parts to come out and take over the session, especially with my partner sat there. It's not an IFS therapy, it's EFT, emotional focus therapy, but I've just spoke to my therapist who says I need to bring the parts in and let the self energy to come out and be in the session, not the parts. But sometimes we don't control when they come, they just come. I
Yeah.
can't control it. And to be honest, they control 99% of my time anyway. So
Yeah.
I'm lucky if I get to myself. Yeah, I just wanted any comments, any feedback. What what kind of where do I go? I
Uh,
am going to carry on doing what you said while the meditation.
yeah. Yeah. So, I hear you and I can hear all the challenge, but what I'm also hearing, I'll be a merchant of hope here, is number one, she sounds like she's open to getting therapy. Number two, the language you're using, you can tell and see that you have parts that are getting activated and you have exiles getting activated, and you mentioned your mother. So it's even though it sounds super challenging, it also sounds like there's a lot of hope because you've identified some things. And just, I'm repeating myself, but in the present day and age, we have so many tools. I mean, it'll take some while for you to be with your reactions and your exiles and your protectors and to figure out what's happening with you.
Mm.
But it also sounds really positive. I'm repeating myself that she's also is open to therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that helps. The fact that she's willing. Yeah.
I mean, nobody means to go around triggering anybody else, right? I mean, it's
No.
just these are the catalysts. I mean, the triggers in me, if I get triggered, it's because it's something in my past, right?
Mhm.
Um, for instance, somebody could be quite happy I have an independent wife, right? Or whoever it is, right? So it's our triggers. So at least you're getting signals and signs pointing to areas you need to work, even though it might be quite painful at this time.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Gene.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think I'm gonna call it a night. I went hour and 20 minutes. So if anybody has more comments or questions, yeah, that's it. Bonnie Weiss, IFS therapy, actually. Yep, that's it, Natalie. Thanks. So I'm easy to get in contact with. Anybody wants to talk. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for showing up. It kind of brings me hope too. And I'm glad we have a community, and at least I can believe we are there to support each other. All right. Thanks for the questions, showing up, input. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Thank you
Yep,
so
bye.
much.
Bye bye.
Oh,
Bye.
Bye. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Hey, good
Yeah.
to meet you.
Yeah. Bye, Jane.
Bye.
Bye, Tatiana. Bye bye.